Matthew Malloy. This Omega-level mutant is one of the strongest. The X-Men universe is teeming with mutants, and while their abilities can range from weather control to teleportation, there are some mutants who are so powerful that they might pose a threat to life as we know it. These uber-powerful mutants are referred to as Omega-level mutants, and while we are aware of Jean Grey, Magneto, and Franklin Richards, today's video is about the most powerful mutant to ever exist. In Brian Michael Bendis and Kris Anka's Uncanny X-Men number 23, Matthew's presence on Earth was disclosed in the aftermath of Marvel's original Sin crossover, and he showed himself to be just as strong as any Omega-level mutants, if not more. While the exact extent of Malloy's strength was never revealed, Xavier clearly saw him as a unique case, as he chose to intervene in a highly intrusive manner. Keep watching to know what many call one of Xavier's worst blunders. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin. He has a rather heartbreaking backstory. There is a principle that Charles Xavier prized above all others, that they would educate mutants and then let them choose what to do with their powers, whether to stand with the X-Men or against them. This freedom of choice regarding their powers was paramount because humans never gave them that choice. However, Charles Xavier messed up, and while he thought he was protecting the world, he neglected his duties towards Matthew Malloy, who was just a child when they first met. Matthew's powers developed earlier than his more ordinary mutant peers, as they do for some very powerful mutants. It started when he was less than 8 years old, signifying how much stronger he would keep getting as he grew. He was identified by Xavier early in this gathering of X-Men aspirants, and his power signature on Cerebro was the biggest that Xavier had ever seen. This led to Xavier taking an interest in the child and following up on many incidents which involved psychic energy decimating local areas. Charles decided to visit Matthew via a childlike representation of himself in order to keep himself safe and better bond with the young mutant. He learned that there was a high possibility that Matthew had caused the death of his own parents, unknowingly of course, due to one of his blasts which had taken place when they were scolding him. He also learned that young Matthew had no control whatsoever on his powers, and that these blasts just happened. Xavier used the bond he had developed with Malloy to discreetly put mental blocks in the young man, gradually limiting his power. After noticing that it was strong emotion in particular that had an adverse effect on Matthew's powers and control over reality, Matthew eventually got powerful enough to see through Xavier's deception and confronted him. Fortunately, Matthew saw the logic in reining in his abilities and decided to have his mind completely erased so that he could live a normal life, and normal life was thus granted to him by Xavier. However, when you have this much power bubbling away inside you, the pot is bound to overflow at some point, and it did. So while this solution worked for a while, after Xavier's death, the mental blocks that he had set in Matthew's head began to erode. Furthermore, the X-Men wouldn't learn about the impending threat until the original Sin storyline, which revealed Xavier's previously undisclosed last will and testament. The will described his encounter with Matthew and enlisted the help of several of his X-Men to continue his efforts to keep Matthew and others around him unharmed. Matthew did lose all control at one point, and Xavier unfortunately was not around to intervene. A crucial comic book story arc. Uncanny X-Men issue number 23 is the first time Matthew Malloy appears to readers in the flesh. The issue is both his first appearance and the story of how the mental blocks put in place by Xavier finally fell apart, leading to Matthew being able to use his enormous power. He looks like any regular guy, a little on the scruffy side, but completely regular in the comics, so one does not really expect the sheer enormity of the power that he is capable of harnessing. When the Earth was attacked by the Skrulls during the Skrull invasion, Matthew and his wife Jules were living in Charleston, South Carolina. The Skrull invasion was a massive crossover event that lasted a long time and involved aliens called the Skrulls, who were shapeshifters, slowly trying to invade and take over Earth, eventually leading to an all-out war. It is when the invasion reached a head that Matthew witnessed his wife's death. He saw her get instantly vaporized while the two of them were having a fight. One of the energy blasts from a Skrull ship had destroyed her. A shield helicarrier that had been in the region soared over his recently wrecked home and blasted the Skrull's head off his shoulders as he came face to face with a Skrull agent who was about to kill him. This sent him into a state of immense shock. Remember how his powers are triggered by deep emotions? Well, floodgates were now open. As a grieving man, he moved away to a place called Newberry, and a year after his wife's death, he ran into his sister-in-law, Alana. Alana immediately recognized him and tried to talk to him, telling him that she was there to help and support him, and that they were family, irrespective of the fact that his wife and her sister had passed. Despite multiple attempts to move away from her, she kept speaking to him, Her sincere remarks went unheard, and his emotional breaking point was reached when his memories of his wife were rekindled. His mutant talents manifested swiftly, and he lost control of them. A burst of energy erupted around him, smashing everything in its path. Alana was killed in the blast, which added to his sadness and self-hate. He just stood there, shocked. In the comic issue's final pages, we see a group of mutants get together for the reading of the last will and testament of Charles Xavier, who had been killed by Scott Summers, or Cyclops as he is better known, in the Avengers vs. X-Men event. To digress a bit, as this is integral to the story, Summers killed Xavier and turned into the Dark Phoenix because he truly believed that Xavier would not do what it would take to force humanity into accepting mutants. He had gotten sick and tired of the discrimination, and it was out of anger, frustration, and the immense power he possessed that he killed his mentor. He continued to believe that he was correct after killing Charles, and thus separated from the rest of the X-Men as well. However, the will reading could not take place without the presence of all the members the will named, and thus they had to go and get Scott. Malloy's story doesn't end in issue number 23, and only gets uglier as the events unfold, and the X-Men learn who exactly Malloy was, and the level of powers he possessed. What happened to his uncontrolled powers? His uncontrollable powers made him a danger to himself and all those around him, and thus everyone got involved. Following the incident where he destroyed his sister-in-law Alana, Matthew remained standing in the large sinkhole he had made, reflecting on what had just occurred. He was shocked himself. A robotic drone with a holographic picture of director Maria Hill of S.H.I.E.L.D. approached him. Keep in mind that the Skrull invasion was a massive crossover event, and the Avengers were also involved. She asked if he was the cause of the calamity and destruction around him, and if he was a mutant. With his abilities manifested, there was one major problem: they were uncontrollable. He was once again driven to his emotional breaking point. Maria couldn't get him to calm down as he was insane, his memory muddled and grief overflowing. Thus, to control him, she dispatched the strike force to his location, only for him to uncontrollably unleash his power and wipe out the entire team. Hill, desperate for help, enlisted the services of Exodus and his ally Headlock, both mutants with telepathic powers, to telepathically engage with him and maybe reason with him. However, both men suffered from nosebleeds and potential brain aneurysms as a result of Matthew's excessive power, as he refused their entry into his head. She then approached the X-Men for help. Hill had Rachel Gray, another mutant, contact Matthew telepathically and stall him as the X-Men reached the helicarrier, using images of Professor X and most of Earth's fiercest heroes to urge him to step aside. However, Rachel's farce only lasted so long. Malloy was able to see through the mirage and discover that the X-Men were to blame, but he didn't hold it against them. It is important to note here that he was not a villain, and nor did he want to cause destruction. He simply did not know how to control his emotions, and by extension, his powers. As a result, when he wrecked the helicarrier, he transferred them away, whilst Maria and her operatives were protected by telekinetic bubbles. As a last-ditch effort, Maria had another helicarrier launch an all-out assault on Matthew, but as they shot, Cyclops and Magic were caught in the crossfire, which killed them instantly. While this is taking place, a mutant named Tempest, who is an interesting addition to the mix as he has the ability to time travel via her temporal bubbles, realizes that there was only one way to stop Malloy, and that was to erase his existence entirely. The writers thus used time travel to end the story of Malloy, something that is considered a sin when it comes to comic book writing. Tempest travels back in time to when Charles was alive, and they go further back to the exact time and place Malloy's parents met to prevent them from meeting, so he ceases to exist. At the same time, and stay with me here, Malloy, unbeknownst to S.H.I.E.L.D., is able to revive himself and returns to kill the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. He tries, but fails to resuscitate Cyclops and Magic. He then arrives at the Jean Grey school after concluding that Scott was correct about humanity. They would never accept mutants. Emma Frost, Cyclops' lover, was on the lawn as he arrived. He asked her for help, however. She was sobbing over Scott's death. Seeing him, she attacked him in rage, however, and he murdered her as well. When the other X-Men members noticed this, they all attacked Malloy. He eventually lost control and destroyed them all, as well as the school. However, Charles and Tempest were successful in preventing Malloy's parents from ever meeting in the past, thus changing the course of history, and it all went back to normal, like the event had never taken place. All the X-Men who had died in the event were alive and well. Him and his powers were essentially wiped off from the face of the Earth. Just how powerful is Matthew Malloy? Xavier had once noticed a mutant signature so strong that he thought Cerebro was broken at first. The rest of the X-Men were on an operation at the time, and Xavier thought Magneto might have picked up on this mutant as well. Knowing Magneto, he knew that he had no time to waste, so Xavier set out on his own, and he came across a new mutant who was exceptionally young. Matthew's abilities were raging out of regulation, and he had previously murdered his parents as a result of his unregulated abilities. After much deliberation, Xavier came to the conclusion that he needed to dampen Matthew's abilities. He urged that the youngster was an outlier and not the regular mutants he fought for. This should be a marker for Malloy's insane powers, because it shows that Charles himself thought that this mutant was too powerful to be free, even after working with Omega-level mutants like Jean Grey. Dr. McCoy describes Matthew Malloy as more than an Omega-level mutant, since he is an Omega-level mutant with Omega-level power. Director Maria Hill also designated him as an Omega threat. Apocalypse, Phoenix, Onslaught, and Franklin Richards were all compared to him by Cyclops. Matthew was said to have godlike abilities, including control over life and death, as well as time and space. He has displayed a variety of skills, including the following listed. Matthew's telekinetic abilities were demonstrated when he demolished the SHIELD airship. Matthew also has the ability to read minds and deflect psychic waves and see past illusions. When Exodus and Headlock attempted to enter his head, he resisted them and severely injured them both. He further has the ability to control and generate numerous types of energy, allowing him to alter the surroundings around him and cause destructive explosion. Charles Xavier believes he can summon energy from another world, a third dimension probably. He can also manipulate, transmute, and modify matter, and can teleport himself or others to faraway places. Lastly, Matthew has the ability to raise himself from the dead. All of this makes him a formidable enemy, and as has been seen, there is literally no winning against him. He can destroy powerful mutants as if they were nothing more than ants under his shoe. To conclude, there are two very important things to take away from Matthew Malloy's story. Number one, the fact that he was truly the most powerful mutant to ever exist. And number two, the fact that Charles Xavier went against all of his principles to make sure that Matthew was first suppressed and then literally skipped through time to ensure his removal from the face of the earth. Do you think Xavier did the right thing? Or could all of this have been avoided if he had just taught young Malloy how to control and use his powers for good when he was a child, instead of putting in mental block? Let us know in the comment section below. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.